Emma Chamberlain is one of the few influencers who've managed to achieve a level of notoriety that allowed her to break free of being an influencer and become more like a celebrity. She's been branching out and taking on a lot more opportunities that aren't usually given to any influencer. She's been a brand ambassador for Louis Vuitton, Lancome, she hosted interviews at the Met Gala year after year, and even landed a major deal with Spotify for her podcast Anything Goes. Since signing her deal with Spotify, Emma has been faced with more scrutiny than ever before. Since her podcast is now mainly video, a lot of clips get reposted over on TikTok, and that's caused a lot of people to analyze the things that she says, and they have strong opinions. It's a mess, so let's get into it. For years, Emma has made vlogs on her YouTube channel showing her day-to-day life, and no matter how big she got, her vlogs were something that always stayed consistent with her. Even though Emma is probably one of the best examples of an influencer who managed to break into the celebrity space successfully, she always stayed true to herself and was someone her audience could relate to. She was open about her anxiety, mental health, and despite being an influencer and having the ability to live a very unrelatable life, she always seemed to present herself as the same person that everyone knew and loved. An article I found talking about this references how Emma made people feel like living a quote-unquote boring life is okay, writing, Emma takes the viewer through her daily routines, making her morning iced coffee, meditating, making an omelet for breakfast, errands, car talks, and inserts clips of her talking to the camera like if it were a friend. Commenters have voiced how they feel comforted by Emma's videos because she does not try to hide the normal parts of her life. Emma's way of capturing mundane moments like making breakfast, grocery shopping, and driving makes you feel like you're spending the day with her. No judgments or pressure of making everything better. But over time, it seemed like Emma started to get burnt out on her normal format, and in December of 2021, she decided to take a step back. She took 6 months off of YouTube and said she wanted to start being intentional with what she was posting. She was only posting when she had something substantial to post, like doing the Met Gala and traveling through Europe. During this time, Emma also started to get a ton of new opportunities outside the ones usually given to an influencer. She was doing more things that had to do with fashion, she was on the cover of huge magazines, doing the Met Gala, and so much more. Despite her fans being upset with the lack of content, I think most of them were happy that she was doing something that finally seemed to fulfill her. Usually when an influencer becomes more like a celebrity, they tend to abandon the platform that got them the following in the first place, and eventually their fans lose interest and move on. But Emma was smart with this. She continued doing her weekly podcast, Anything Goes, and that was enough to keep her connected with her viewers. In November of last year, Emma signed a major deal with Spotify for her podcast. She was now posting multiple episodes a week, and she was going back to her vlogging roots by adding video to her podcast. As great as it's been for her audience to see Emma more and feel connected to her, there's also been a downside to the Spotify deal. Clips and sound bites from her podcast were being posted to TikTok, and that opened Emma up to a whole new audience of people.
When I woke up this morning, I decided I'm not going to think very hard today. I just knew. I opened my eyes and said, today's going to be a simple day. It just is. And I'll tell you, I've had a great day.
Over the past few months, there's been an influx of people making videos talking about Emma's podcast and saying that she sounds very out of touch, and that's what made them stop listening.
I'm so glad I'm not the only one who stopped listening to Emma Chamberlain's podcasts. Like, a lot of her messaging was basically saying you don't need to go to college to succeed in life. And yes, that worked out for her in her situation. But being someone who's 25 and who has gone to college, I'm like, girl. Like, in one of her episodes, she was interviewing the founder of Bodhi, which is like a men's luxury brand. And she was basically like, do you think college limited your creativity? And the founder was like, no, like, it helped me learn a lot. And so what I'm trying to say is college, yes, is not needed to be successful, but learning is so important.
And this opened up a whole new conversation about Emma needing to go to college. A lot of viewers who've grown up watching Emma are mostly either in university or working, and they feel like they've grown up, but Emma's content and thoughts have stayed the same. They feel like Emma is stuck in a bubble and think she would benefit from having someone to bounce her ideas off of and would be challenged in an environment like university.
I genuinely don't say this to be rude, but Emma Chamberlain's podcast genuinely is just a girl that needs to go to college. I'm not saying that in the way that means, oh, she's dumb, she needs to go to college. She's just clearly a girl that needs to riff ideas with people. And sometimes they need a little feedback, right? Like, I think sometimes she gets a little in her echo chamber. I also think she could benefit a lot from being guided in her studies, literary, philosophical. I also think it would give her a lot of stuff to talk about because she wouldn't be just thinking of content and ideas on her own. She would instead be guided by a syllabus or just get ideas from being out in academic spaces, which is clearly the direction that she wants to take her podcast. Like, she's wanting to take it in this more philosophical, psychological.
And honestly, I don't really love this take. I feel like, yes, university is great and you should never stop learning, but you don't have to go to university to have the ability to think on a deeper level. I'm sure Emma is still learning every day and having new experiences from living the life that she has. Maybe not the same type of experiences a college kid is getting, but that doesn't mean she stopped learning. Ever since this take on Emma needing to attend college kind of started to gain traction, a lot more people have been sharing a different take and think Emma doesn't need to go to college to appease the people who did. It's the people who did and feel like the content isn't relatable to them anymore who should find someone new to watch.
Hearing take after take about how Emma Chamberlain's podcast is not profound, is not deep thinking, she's having thoughts that you had when you were 10 years old. Hearing a lot of people say things that are along the lines that Emma Chamberlain needs to go to college to learn how to think, to have a better podcast, and yada, yada, yada. My hot take is you guys need to find some other people to follow besides the people you grew up with that got famous when they were 16 years old for being some kind of philosophical thinker online. The issue is not Emma Chamberlain, the issue is that you're growing up and you are not changing the content you are consuming accordingly. I'm a content creator on a much smaller micro level than Emma Chamberlain, but there's a level of entitlement as a viewer for you to be like, Emma Chamberlain needs to go to college because her content doesn't suit my interests anymore. Emma Chamberlain does not need to go to college if she doesn't want to. She does not need to change her podcast style. In fact, it is probably super interesting to girls that are like 15, 16, 17 years old. And the fact that you, as a mid-20-year-old, no longer finds it relatable, you need to look inward and ask yourself, why are you expecting philosophical and profound thoughts from an influencer that stopped going to high school? Just so I'm abundantly clear, that is not meant to be a diss on Emma Chamberlain. She's proven to be a successful business owner and influencer by not finishing high school and following her passion. The diss is actually on you guys for critiquing somebody for the content that they have always made. She has always made incredibly surface level content. It's not like she once made super profound content and then stopped. This has been her content. Why are you returning to the same person you started following at 15 years old for tackling adult life, knowing fully that she experiences a life that is nothing similar to the adult life that you live in the real world? Like, stop critiquing Emma Chamberlain's podcast and find somebody else to follow. The internet is massive. You guys act like there's only 7 people to get ideas from.
And I agree. I'm someone who loved Emma's vlogs, but was never able to get into her podcast. It isn't for me, and that's fine. I do think a lot of the thoughts that she shares are probably some thoughts that people in their teens are having, and maybe that's the audience that she's catering for. It's not like Emma signed a deal with Spotify and just decided to change her content and no one can relate to her anymore. This has been what her podcast has been for years now, and if you can no longer relate to it, it's fine. That's actually normal. We should be growing and finding new content creators to watch, but not everything has to be philosophical and educational content that challenges you. I think a lot of people who watch Emma just watch it for comfort or mindless entertainment while they're doing other things, and that's what it's always been. Yes, a lot of her takes probably are out of touch with the life of someone who went to college and then went to work. Yes, she does say things that probably make someone living a more normal life roll their eyes, but this is always what it's been. We also have to remember, Emma is posting multiple episodes a week with this new Spotify deal. Doing a podcast on your own is difficult enough. Having to fill every second of space with talking so viewers don't get bored is hard, and then having to have interesting topics to keep people listening. I feel like she was bound to have some out of touch or unrelatable takes talking that much and posting that often. If she took a step back and only did one episode a week, maybe she would have more meaningful stories stored away to fill the gaps. This is just a creator who got famous at a young age and is now having experiences that most of us can't relate to at all. Of course, some of her thoughts are going to be unrelatable, but I think that's okay. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think about everything down below, and I'll see you next time.